The horse gave out by dawn. Its chest heaved like a bellows, and with Lark fading in my arms, I couldn't push it another mile. We'd ridden through cactus country, past dry creek beds and rattler hollows, until the land gave way to rough hills and tangled mesquite. I knew a place nearby, an old logging cabin I once holed up in during my outlaw days. The memory of it clung like smoke. Splintered door, broken stove, a rotten cot full of rat turds and old regrets. Still, it was shelter. I laid her down and tried to stitch what I could. Her wound was bad, too deep, too ragged. The bullet was still lodged near her heart. I cleaned it with whiskey and wrapped her chest with torn strips of my shirt. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, just shivered beneath her fever, whispering things I couldn't make out. By nightfall, the fever burned hotter. Her breath came shallow. I watched her twist in pain, fingers clutching the blanket like it was a lifeline. And I sat there, useless, cursed by the same hands that once robbed stagecoaches and shot lawmen without blinking. Funny thing about redemption, you don't realize how far you are from it until someone else starts dying under your watch. I muttered, "Don't you dare die on me." Then I remembered a man. They called him Gray Elk, used to live up the mountain near Dead Man's Hollow. Some said he was a hermit, others a witch doctor. All I knew was that he once stitched a man's leg back on with pine tar and boiled nettle. But Gray Elk didn't take charity. He traded in coin, and the only coin I had was buried under that old oak stump behind the chapel I burned down in San Rojas 5 years ago. Except I wasn't that man anymore. Or so I told myself. I saddled the spare horse I'd stolen a week prior and rode like hell back into ghost country. I had one small pouch of gold dust tucked in my boot, last piece of my outlaw life, meant for something better than this. Funny how better starts looking like a dying girl on a filthy cot. The mountain path was cruel sharp rocks, blind corners, and wind that screamed like old spirits. I found Gray Elk's shack wedged between two granite boulders. The door was shut. Smoke curled from a crooked chimney. I knocked once. Nothing. Knocked again, harder. "She's dying," I shouted. "You got medicine, I got gold. Trade, plain and simple." The door creaked open. Gray Elk stood there, gray beard like a wild thicket, eyes dark as coal, hands blackened from years of fire and herbs. He stared at me for a long time. "You ride with ghosts," he said. "Don't we all?" I said back. He let me in. The place smelled of dried sage, pine resin, and bones. He pulled a jar of thick salve from a dusty shelf, turned it in his hands, then looked up. "You stole the gold?" I nodded. "Not lately." He grunted, almost a laugh. Even the darkest souls might save a flicker of life. I tossed the pouch on his table. He handed me the jar. "Use it fast. Moonlight strengthens it." I didn't ask questions. I just raced through the moon-black woods, heart pounding, mind full of curses and prayers. I didn't know if she'd be alive when I got back. But I knew this. If she died, it'd be the last ghost I could carry. By the time I made it back to the cabin, the night was deep and still, as if the earth itself had paused to listen. The place looked abandoned again. No smoke, no sound. Just the creak of branches and the low moan of wind through the pines. My gut turned to ice. I kicked the door open. She was still alive, but only just. Lark's face was slick with sweat, eyes sunken, breath rattling in her chest like pebbles in a tin can. Her skin had gone the color of ash, and the bandage I left was soaked through. She didn't stir when I called her name. "Hold on," I whispered, falling to my knees beside her. The salve smelled sharp, something between wild mint and burnt leaves. I smeared it across her wound, careful not to press too hard, though part of me knew gentleness wouldn't matter if I was too late. I whispered Gray Elk's words to myself like a spell. Moonlight strengthens it. Outside, the silver glow cut through the shutters like a blade. I didn't know if it'd be enough. Hours passed. I dozed against the wall, gun in hand, ears tuned. for hoofbeats or death or both. Then, just as the first rays of dawn broke over the hills, I heard a cough. I turned. Lark's eyes were open. "You came back," she rasped. "Course I did," I muttered, trying not to let emotion show. "Didn't come this far to lose you to a fever." She blinked slow, like every thought took effort. "That salve, where did you find it? Man up in the cliffs?" "Gray elk." Her lips curled faintly. "Thought he was just a story." "Nope, just old, ornery, and too wise for this world." She tried to sit up, but winced. I helped her ease back, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The air between us was quiet, like something new was settling in. "Lark," I said, "why were they after you?" She stared at the rafters for a long beat. Then, "They think I killed a man. He was part of a gang that ran my brother off. Beat him half to death for nothing more than his bloodline. He's part native, like me. Town folk said we didn't belong. One night they set fire to our place. I got out. He didn't." Her voice cracked. "I found one of the men who did it. Maybe I meant to kill him. Maybe I didn't. But I sure as hell shot him." I took a slow breath, heart heavy with the kind of grief I'd run from most my life. "You didn't run to escape justice. You ran because you knew justice wasn't coming." She nodded. There was a long silence between us. Not uncomfortable, just full of things too hard to say out loud. And then she said something I didn't expect. "My brother. If he's still alive, he'll be in Bartholomew's Gulch. That's where he said he'd go, if he made it out." Her voice was soft, far off, but I ain't got the strength to make it there alone. I stared at the fire, watching it dance low in the hearth. I could have said no, could have walked out and let fate do its work. I owed her nothing, but I'd seen too many people vanish into shallow graves because no one gave a damn. "We'll find him," I said. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Not the kind that begged for sympathy, the kind that showed a storm had passed through and something inside had survived. "You sure?" She whispered. "No," I said. "But I'm done running from what's right." That night I sat outside the cabin, staring at the stars. I thought of the men I'd killed, the lives I'd ruined, the gold I'd stolen. I never expected a second chance. Never asked for one, but maybe, just maybe, this was it. By the time I made it back to the cabin, the night was deep and still, as if the earth itself had paused to listen. The place looked abandoned again. No smoke, no sound, just the creak of branches and the low moan of wind through the pines. My gut turned to ice. I kicked the door open. She was still alive, but only just. Lark's face was slick with sweat, eyes sunken, breath rattling in her chest like pebbles in a tin can. Her skin had gone the color of ash, and the bandage I left was soaked through. She didn't stir when I called her name. "Hold on," I whispered, falling to my knees beside her. The salve smelled sharp, something between wild mint and burnt leaves. I smeared it across her wound, careful not to press too hard, though part of me knew gentleness wouldn't matter if I was too late. I whispered Gray Elk's words to myself like a spell. "Moonlight strengthens it." Outside, the silver glow cut through the shutters like a blade. I didn't know if it'd be enough. Hours passed. I dozed against the wall, gun in hand, ears tuned for hoofbeats or death or both. Then, just as the first rays of dawn broke over the hills, I heard a cough. I turned. Lark's eyes were open. "You came back," she rasped. "Course I did," I muttered, trying not to let emotion show. "Didn't come this far to lose you to a fever." She blinked slow, like every thought took effort. "That salve, where did you find it? Man up in the cliffs?" "Gray elk." Her lips curled faintly. "Thought he was just a story." "Nope, just old, ornery, and too wise for this world." She tried to sit up, but winced. I helped her ease back, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The air between us was quiet, like something new was settling in. "Lark," I said, "why were they after you?" She stared at the rafters for a long beat. Then, "They think I killed a man. He was part of a gang that ran my brother off. Beat him half to death for nothing more than his bloodline. He's part native, like me. Town folk said we didn't belong. One night they set fire to our place. I got out. He didn't." Her voice cracked. "I found one of the men who did it. Maybe I meant to kill him. Maybe I didn't. But I sure as hell shot him." I took a slow breath, heart heavy with the kind of grief I'd run from most my life. "You didn't run to escape justice. You ran because you knew justice wasn't coming." She nodded. There was a long silence between us. Not uncomfortable, just full of things too hard to say out loud. And then she said something I didn't expect. "My brother. If he's still alive, he'll be in Bartholomew's Gulch. That's where he said he'd go, if he made it out." Her voice was soft, far off, but I ain't got the strength to make it there alone. I stared at the fire, watching it dance low in the hearth. I could have said no, could have walked out and let fate do its work. I owed her nothing, but I'd seen too many people vanish into shallow graves because no one gave a damn. "We'll find him," I said. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. Not the kind that begged for sympathy, the kind that showed a storm had passed through and something inside had survived. "You sure?" She whispered. "No," I said. "But I'm done running from what's right." That night I sat outside the cabin, staring at the stars. I thought of the men I'd killed, the lives I'd ruined, the gold I'd stolen. I never expected a second chance. Never asked for one, but maybe, just maybe, this was it. She slept for 2 full days after that. I kept the fire stoked and the door barred, rifle propped beside me, like an old friend I hoped not to need. Outside, a hawk circled the clearing now and then, and once I saw a shadow in the trees. But no bounty hunter in his right mind would come this far alone. Not without backup. On the 3rd night, she stirred. I was boiling creek water when I heard her cough again, stronger this time. I rushed in to find her sitting up, pale but steady, lips cracked and eyes clearer than I'd seen them. "You look like death warmed over," I said, grinning. "Thanks," she rasped. "You make a girl feel special." I helped her sip water, slow and careful. When she finally leaned back on the cot, she stared at the rafters for a while, like she was searching for something in the knots of the wood. Then she spoke, voice low. "My brother's name is Thomas. They said he died, but I never saw the body. Never even saw the fire go out." "Who said?" I asked. "The vigilantes that burned us out. Men from Bartholomew's Gulch said it was an accident. Side half-breeds. Shouldn't have been squatting near the ridge. But I knew they came for us. My father was native. My mother wasn't. That was all it took." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I'd heard plenty of stories like hers, folks driven out for the crime of being born. But there was something in her tone that chilled me. Not anger, not grief, just a low, simmering resolve. I went. "Looking for Tomas," she continued. "Found a man bragging about what they did. Said my brother ran like a coward, left me to die. I shot him. Don't know if it was fatal. Didn't care." "You looking to find Tomas," I said, slow. "Or avenge him?" She didn't answer right away. "Then maybe both." That answer settled heavy in the air between us. "You think he's alive?" I asked. "I hope he is. I need to look him in the eye and know he didn't leave me. And if he's dead—" She trailed off. "What then?" She looked at me, really looked. "Then I want to know what kind of justice a world like this leaves behind." That hit something in me I'd buried deep. The part that remembered what it felt like to watch men die because lawmen were too far off and too late to matter. The Anna part that remembered my own brother dying with a bullet in his spine because we trusted the wrong posse to make things right. "I'll take you," I said finally, "to Bartholomew's Gulch. But I'm not looking for a war, Lark." "Neither am I," she said, though her eyes burned like embers. "I'm looking for the truth," I nodded. "Then that's where we ride." That night I sat beside her as she drifted back to sleep, her breath steadier now. I could have left her there, could have slipped away and left her with a clean shot at survival. But something had shifted in me. Maybe it was the way she kept fighting, even when death hovered near. Maybe it was the ghost of someone I used to be, someone who believed in loyalty, in family, in giving a damn. Or maybe it was just this. When I looked at her, I didn't see a fugitive anymore. I saw someone worth standing beside, and that terrified me more than any bounty hunter ever could. Bartholomew's Gulch was 3 days' ride southeast, past dry creeks and brittle bluffs, where wind sang low through broken rocks like some mourning ghost. Lark was still too weak to ride alone, so I hitched her to me in the saddle, her arms looped loose around my waist. She didn't say much. I didn't press. What little talk we shared came at night by the fire. She'd speak of Thomas like he was still a boy, skinny, full of mischief, always climbing where he shouldn't. I'd sit quiet, letting her voice fill the silence I'd grown used to over too many years. We reached the edge of the gulch late. On the 3rd day, smoke curled in the air, not from cook fires, but ruin. Burned-out cabins sat like broken teeth, scattered along the ridgeline. The air smelled of ash and horse sweat. A place that had known violence and wore it like a scar. The town itself was half abandoned, but a few souls still lingered, old men with hollow stares, kids too small to understand loss. We hitched our horse near a well and asked around, but most turned away before we even got 2 words out, until we met her, an old woman with clouded eyes and a shawl thick with dust. She sat outside what used to be a schoolhouse, peeling potatoes, like nothing had changed in 50 years. "You're looking for Tomas," she said, before we asked. Lark's breath caught. "Yes, ma'am, he's my brother." The woman didn't smile. He left, rode north with a posse not long after the burning. Said he was chasing down the men responsible. I stepped forward. "He'd go alone?" She shook her head. "Had a small band with him. Some call them vigilantes. Others say they're worse than the ones they hunt." Her eyes met mine. "You find him. Tell him the gulch don't need more blood spilled. We've had our fill." We thanked her and moved on. Lark was quiet until we cleared the last burned cabin. "You believe her?" she asked. "I believe he's alive," I said. "That's something." She didn't speak for a while, just stared at the horizon where the hills grew jagged like old bones. "He changed," she murmured finally. "They burned our home, nearly killed us. I know it did something to him. Revenge changes everyone," I said. "You think he's out for blood?" "I think he won't stop until someone stops him." I felt it then, that pull in my gut. The old instinct that something worse lay ahead than either of us was ready for. "You sure you want to find him?" I asked. Truth cuts both ways. She looked at me, jaw tight, fire in her eyes again. "He's all I have left. I'd rather find the man he became than let his ghost haunt me forever." We made camp in a canyon that night. I sat awake long. After she drifted off, staring at the stars, turning over the names of towns and gangs in my mind. I'd known vigilantes once worse than the outlaws they hunted. Dressed their vengeance up in badges and justice, left nothing behind but bodies. Maybe that's what Thomas had become. Maybe we were riding into the jaws of another kind of lawless fire. I rolled Lark's blanket tighter around her. If this trail ended in violence, I'd stand by her. But I also knew this. If revenge had claimed Thomas, she'd need more than truth. She'd need someone willing to pull her back from the edge. We caught up with them near Three Finger Ridge, a jagged stretch of high rock with the trail split between the high country and the deadlands. Tracks were easy enough to follow. Deep hoof prints, at least 5 horses, all moving fast and hard. They hadn't bothered hiding their path. Men chasing justice rarely do, but it wasn't just justice they chased. The deeper we rode into that country, the more we found signs. Broken branches, spent casings, a coat half buried in dry mud with bullet holes clean through the back. Thomas and his posse weren't just tracking, they were executing. Lark didn't say much, but I could feel her body tense behind me in the saddle every time we passed something new. A man doesn't need to speak to know when someone's reaching their limit. It was nearly dusk when we crested a narrow pass and saw the riders below, camped in a rocky hollow. 5 men, weathered, armed. Their horses were restless, and so was I. Lark slid off the saddle and crouched beside a boulder, eyes fixed on the group. "That's him," she whispered. "The one tending the fire, his shoulders, the way he moves." "That's Thomas." I peered closer. He was broader than I expected, face shadowed by a brimmed hat, rifle across his knees. But there was something in the way he held himself, like he was always listening, always ready to bolt. "We can wait until morning," I said. "Catch him alone." "No," she said, standing. "I'm done waiting." Before I could stop her, she stepped out into the open. Dust kicked up around. Her boots and the wind caught her shawl as she raised her arms, trembling. "Thomas." The men leaped to their feet, guns drawn, but Thomas barked out, "Hold." She took another step. "It's me. It's Lark." A silence dropped over the camp like a noose. Thomas moved forward slowly. "Prove it," he said. "Say something only." She'd know. She hesitated, then said, "You used to cry when Pay made you eat corn mush. Said it tasted like soap and sorrow." I saw something crack in his face, some mask drop. He stepped forward, voice low. "You were dead. They said you were dead." "They tried," she said, voice wavering, "but someone saved me." He looked up at me then, eyes hard, assessing. "Who's he?" "Someone who's seen enough killing," she said. "Someone who pulled me out when everyone else turned away." His eyes lingered on me a moment too long. Then he nodded once, sharp and slow. The other men lowered their guns, but their eyes stayed cold. Wolves, every one of them. Men who'd done what they thought needed doing and couldn't come back from it. I stepped forward. "You tracking the ones who burned your place?" "We found some," Thomas said. "Others are still out there. Don't suppose you left." "Any alive for trial?" I asked. "No trial was coming," he said. They lit the match. I just followed the smoke. I looked at Lark. Her hands were trembling. "Not from fear, but something heavier." "We didn't come to stop you," she said softly. "I came to see if the boy I grew up with still had something left inside him." "And if I don't?" Thomas asked. She stepped closer. "Then I'll say goodbye to my brother tonight." The silence that followed was so heavy, it seemed to pull the canyon in around us. The fire popped. A hawk screamed somewhere above, and slowly Thomas lowered his rifle. "Set up another fire," he told the others. "We'll talk this out. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it wasn't war either. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for." That night we all sat around the fire, Thomas, Lark, me, and the 4 other riders who watched us like hawks waiting for a twitch. No one drank, no one laughed. This wasn't the kind of campfire you told stories around. This was the kind that hovered on the edge of something final. Thomas hadn't said much since calling the truce. He sat with his arms on his knees, staring into the flames like they might burn a clearer answer into the ashes. Lark sat opposite him, wrapped in a blanket, her face tight with a storm she hadn't yet named. Finally she broke the silence. "You blamed me, didn't you?" Thomas didn't look up. "They said you ran. Left me in that house." She shook her head. "I tried to get to you. The fire was too fast. I thought you were gone." "You weren't there when I crawled out," he muttered. "I was bleeding, choking on smoke, and you were just gone." "I was shot," she said, voice rising. "I barely made it out alive, Thomas. You think I wouldn't have come for you?" His jaw clenched. "I didn't know what to think. Everyone said you were dead. The house was gone. Ma was gone. Pa." He finally looked up, eyes glassy. "Everything was gone." Silence again. But this time it was softer. "I blamed you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not because it was true, but because it was easier than blaming myself." She nodded slowly. "I blamed myself too." That broke something open. Thomas stood, fists trembling. "Do you know what it's like to hunt men?" To wake up every morning with a name on your tongue and blood on your hands? I told myself it was justice, but most nights I just wanted someone to hurt the way I did. I know, she said. That's why I came. I watched the fire crackle between them, feeling something settle in my chest I hadn't known was there. Not peace. Not yet, but something close enough to breathe through. I didn't come to drag you home, Lark said. I came to remind you that you had one. Thomas stared at her a long while. Then, slowly, he stepped around the fire and pulled her into a tight embrace. They stayed like that for a long time. Two broken pieces trying to find where they still fit. Behind them, the other riders shifted, unsure what to do with the warmth that had crept in. One stood up, spit in the fire, and muttered, "We'll head out come morning. Leave you two be." And just like that, the posse scattered into the dark. I stayed back watching Tomas and Lark talk in low voices. I didn't need to hear the words. I'd seen enough. The road ahead was theirs to walk now. So I stood, packed my things, and saddled up. Lark turned just as I was mounting. "You leaving?" "Was never mine to stay," I said, offering a small smile. She stepped forward, hugged me tight. "Thank you, Josiah, for more than I can name." I nodded, words caught somewhere in my throat. As I rode out, I didn't look back. Some goodbyes are meant to be silent, but I carried her voice with me. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a weight. It felt like something worth carrying. The sun hadn't yet crested the ridgeline when I hit the trail. The canyon below stretched gold and violet in the early light, the kind of morning that makes you believe the land still remembers how to forgive. My horse moved easy beneath me, slow and steady, as if he sensed something had changed. I didn't have a destination in mind, just west, always west. Out toward the edge of maps and memory. Behind me, Lark and Tomas would be mending something precious, maybe even building something new. But my time with them had passed. I was the hinge in their story, not the hero, the bridge, the scar. I stopped at the ridge's peak and took one last look over the land. Smoke curled faintly from their new camp down below, a thin ribbon of warmth, in a world that had gone cold for too many years. Then I heard it, her voice, clear as the wind. "Josiah?" I turned in the saddle. Lark stood far below, hands cupped around her mouth, hair wild in the breeze. "Thank you," she shouted, "for showing me mercy." The words echoed through the canyon like a prayer. I didn't speak, just lifted a hand, slow and sure, and gave her the smallest nod. Then I turned west and rode on. She had her brother. He had his reckoning. And me? I had distance. I had silence. And for the first time in a long while, I had something close to peace. The ghosts I rode with still lingered, sure enough, but they'd grown quiet, less like chains, more like shadows. And maybe that's all redemption really is. Not forgetting the blood on your hands, but learning how to keep them open anyway. I rode till the sun burned overhead, till the land flattened, out into something unfamiliar and full of promise. A new town waited somewhere beyond the horizon. New people, new regrets, but also, maybe, one more chance to get it right, and I would take it. Not because I thought I deserved it, but because someone once looked at me broken, spent, damned, and chose to believe I was worth saving. Thanks for riding with Coyote's Campfire Tailies. Stay by the fire and pick your next story.